Steve McQueen was riding his motorcycle up Mulholland Drive on a Sunday afternoon in 1971 when he heard an engine screaming behind him. Not the good kind of scream, the panicked kind. The kind that says someone's lost control and doesn't know how to get it back. Steve glanced in his mirror and saw a kid on a motorcycle coming up fast. Too fast, wobbling. The bike was getting away from him, and up ahead the road curved sharp to the left with nothing but a 200-foot drop on the right side. Steve had maybe 3 seconds to make a decision. Keep going and let the kid figure it out, or do something that would probably hurt. Steve McQueen didn't hesitate. He hit the brakes, turned his bike sideways, and became a human roadblock. What happened in the next 5 seconds cost him a shattered shoulder and 3 months in a cast. But it saved a 17-year-old kid's life, and it proved that the king of cool was more than just a movie star who liked fast machines. He was someone who understood that heroism isn't about looking good. It's about doing what's right even when it hurts. It was May 23, 1971, Los Angeles, California, Mulholland Drive, the legendary winding road that runs along the ridge of the Santa Monica Mountains. On one side, the San Fernando Valley. On the other side, a straight drop to nowhere. It's a beautiful drive, scenic, but it's also dangerous. Sharp curves, steep drops, no guardrails in a lot of places. And it's a magnet for people who want to test themselves. Drivers, bikers, people who want to feel alive by getting close to the edge. Steve McQueen was 41 years old. He was at the peak of his career, the biggest movie star in the world. The Great Escape, Bullet, The Thomas Crown Affair. Every movie he made was a hit. He was called the king of cool for a reason. Tough, masculine, confident. The kind of guy who did his own stunts and didn't talk much but said everything with a look. Women wanted him. Men wanted to be him. He had fame, money, and respect. But Steve's real passion wasn't acting. It was machines, cars, motorcycles, racing. He'd been obsessed with motorcycles since he was a teenager. Grew up poor in Indiana, bounced around foster homes, joined the Marines, got into trouble. Motorcycles were his escape, his freedom, the one thing that made sense in a chaotic world. By 1971, Steve had one of the best motorcycle collections in the world. Vintage bikes, racing bikes, custom builds, and he rode them. Hard, not just for show. He competed in desert races, did his own maintenance, spent more time in his garage than in Hollywood parties. On this particular Sunday, Steve had decided to take a ride up Mulholland. It was a perfect day, clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, light traffic. He was riding one of his favorites, a Triumph Bonneville 650, a classic British bike, fast, responsive, beautiful. Steve wasn't going crazy fast, maybe 50, 55 miles per hour, just enjoying the ride, the curves, the view, the feeling of the machine between his legs. This was where he felt most himself. Not on a movie set, not at a premiere, on a bike on a mountain road. He'd been riding for about 20 minutes when he heard it. An engine revving too high, coming up behind him, fast. Steve glanced in his mirror. About 200 yards back, there was another motorcycle. A kid on what looked like a Honda, smaller bike. The kid was going way too fast for the curves. Steve could see it in the way the bike was moving. Erratic, unstable. The kid was in over his head. Steve backed off his throttle a bit, moving to the right side of his lane to give the kid room to pass if he wanted. But the kid wasn't slowing down. He was gaining speed. Steve could see him now in his mirror. Young, probably 16, 17 years old, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, no proper gear, no leather, just a helmet. The kid looked terrified. Steve pulled over slightly, waving his hand to signal the kid to slow down. But the kid wasn't in control anymore. The bike was controlling him. Steve could see it happening. The kid was target fixating, staring at Steve's bike instead of the road ahead. His body was rigid. His hands were probably death gripping the handlebars. Classic panic. And up ahead, maybe 300 yards, there was a sharp left curve. One of the worst on Mulholland. If you hit that curve too fast, you go straight off the edge. Nothing but air and rocks below. Steve's mind went into calculation mode. The kid was doing maybe 70, maybe 75. Too fast for that curve. He'd try to brake and the bike would skid. or he'd try to turn and low side. Either way, he was going off that cliff unless something changed. Steve looked ahead at the curve, looked in his mirror at the kid. 3 seconds to decide. Steve made his choice. He stood up on his pegs, sat back down, and cranked his throttle. His Triumph surged forward. He had maybe 200 yards to the curve. The kid was maybe 150 yards behind him. Steve accelerated hard, getting ahead. Then he did something that goes against every riding instinct. He hit his brakes, hard. His rear wheel started to skid. He turned his bike perpendicular to the road, sliding sideways, blocking both lanes. His bike was now a wall, and the kid was coming straight at him at 70 miles per hour. Steve planted his feet on the ground, holding the bike steady. He could see the kid's face now, eyes wide, mouth open. The kid saw Steve's bike blocking the road and panic gave way to pure terror. The kid grabbed his brakes, both of them. The worst thing you can do on a motorcycle at speed. The front wheel locked. The bike started to flip forward. The rear wheel came off the ground. Steve knew what was about to happen. The kid's bike was going to crash into his. There was no avoiding it. The only question was how bad. Steve braced himself, keeping his feet planted, trying to make his body and his bike into as stable a barrier as possible. The kid's bike hit Steve's front wheel at probably 40 miles per hour. The impact was massive. Steve's Triumph was knocked sideways. Steve's shoulder took the brunt of it as the handlebars twisted violently. He heard something crack, felt white-hot pain shoot down his arm. His bike went down. He went down. And the kid's bike went down. They slid together across the asphalt. Steve's shoulder was screaming. He could feel his collarbone grinding. But he kept his head, stayed loose, let the slide happen instead of fighting it. He'd crashed before. He knew how to fall. The kid didn't. The kid was rigid, tumbling, bouncing. They slid maybe 30 feet before stopping. Steve lay there for a second. His shoulder was on fire. He could taste blood in his mouth. He'd bitten his tongue in the impact. His leather jacket was torn, road rash on his arm, but he was alive. He looked over. The kid was about 10 feet away, lying in the road, not moving. "Hey!" Steve's voice was rough. "Kid, you okay?" The kid groaned, moved, started trying to sit up. Steve forced himself to his feet. His left arm was useless, hanging wrong, definitely broken. He walked over to the kid, keeping an eye on the road. If a car came around that curve right now, they were in trouble. "Don't move, just stay still." The kid was crying. I'm so sorry. I couldn't stop. I couldn't." Steve knelt down beside him. "Easy, just breathe. Where does it hurt?" The kid did a quick self-assessment. "My leg, my knee, I think I hit it." Steve looked. The kid's jeans were torn. His knee was bleeding, but not badly. "Can you move your toes?" The kid wiggled his toes. "Yeah." Steve nodded. "Good, you're probably okay. Bruised, but okay." The kid looked at Steve, really looked at him. Recognition dawned. You're Steve McQueen." Steve tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Yeah, and you just wrecked my bike." The kid started crying harder. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. I don't know how, but $600." Steve put his good hand on the kid's shoulder. "Hey, forget the bike. You're alive. That's what matters." The kid looked at Steve's arm. "Your arm, oh God, your arm is..." Steve glanced down. Yeah, his left shoulder was definitely not where it should be. "I've had worse." A car came around the curve, saw them in the road, stopped. A middle-aged couple got out. "Oh my God, are you hurt? Should we call an ambulance?" Steve nodded. "Yeah, ambulance. Tell them 2 motorcycle accident victims. One with a broken shoulder, one with possible leg injury. Mulholland Drive, about 2 miles west of Laurel Canyon." The man ran back to his car to make the call. The woman came over. "Can I do anything?" Steve was starting to feel lightheaded, shock setting in. "Yeah, make sure that kid doesn't move around too much. And if I pass out, don't let me roll over on my bad shoulder." The woman's eyes widened. "You're Steve McQueen." Steve was getting tired of hearing that. "Lady, right now I'm just a guy with a broken shoulder. Can you help or not?" She nodded and moved to the kid. The ambulance took 15 minutes, longest 15 minutes of Steve's life. The pain was getting worse. He sat on the side of the road trying to breathe through it. The kid was crying, apologizing over and over. Steve finally said, "Kid, if you apologize one more time, I'm gonna make my shoulder worse by smacking you with my good arm. You screwed up, you panicked, it happens. But you're alive, so shut up and be grateful." When the paramedics arrived, they assessed both of them. The kid had a badly bruised knee, some road rash, and a mild concussion. Nothing serious. Steve had a dislocated shoulder, a fractured clavicle, multiple contusions, and road rash on his left arm and ribs. The paramedic looked at him. "Sir, how did this happen?" Steve gestured at the curve ahead. "Kid was going too fast. Couldn't stop. I blocked him so he wouldn't go off the cliff." The paramedic stared at him. "You blocked him? With your bike?" Steve shrugged with his good shoulder and immediately regretted it. "Yeah." The paramedic shook his head. "That was either really brave or really stupid." Steve managed a small smile. Little of both, probably. They loaded Steve and the kid into the ambulance. On the way to the hospital, the kid said, "Why'd you do it? You didn't know me. You could have just moved out of the way." Steve looked at him. "Because I've been where you were. Young, stupid, and over my head on a bike. And someone helped me once. Taught me how to ride right. Probably saved my life. So I guess I was paying it forward." At the hospital, they had to reset Steve's shoulder. It was excruciating. They gave him something for the pain, but it barely touched it. The doctor said he'd fractured his clavicle in 2 places. He'd need surgery to pin it. He'd be in a cast for at least 8 weeks, maybe longer. No riding, no stunts, no physical work. Steve had 2 movies scheduled. One was supposed to start shooting in 6 weeks. His agent was going to lose his mind. The kid's parents showed up at the hospital. They were frantic. Their son had taken his older brother's motorcycle without permission. They'd had no idea he was on Mulholland. When they found out what happened, they wanted to see Steve, to thank him. The nurse asked Steve if he'd see them. Steve was exhausted, medicated, in pain. But he said yes. The parents came in. The father was crying. "Mr. McQueen, I don't know how to thank you. Our son, you saved our son's life." Steve was lying in the hospital bed, his shoulder immobilized. "Your son needs to take a motorcycle safety course before he gets back on a bike. And he needs proper gear, leather jacket, gloves, boots, not jeans and a t-shirt." The father nodded. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever you say." The mother was holding Steve's good hand. "You're a hero." Steve pulled his hand back gently. "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do." The father shook his head. "No, most people would have gotten out of the way. You didn't. You put yourself in danger to save our boy. That's a hero." Steve was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your son made a mistake. Could have cost him his life. But he's getting a second chance. Make sure he learns from it. Make sure he respects what motorcycles can do. They're beautiful machines, but they'll kill you if you don't respect them." The parents promised they would. They left. Steve never saw them again. Steve spent 3 days in the hospital. The surgery went well. They pinned his clavicle, reset his shoulder. He was put in a full shoulder immobilizer that made him look like he was wearing half a suit of armor. When he got out, the press had the story. "Steve McQueen injured in motorcycle accident." The headlines made it sound like he'd crashed showing off. Steve didn't correct them, didn't do interviews, didn't tell the real story. His agent was furious. "You broke your shoulder saving some kid? Steve, you're supposed to be filming in 6 weeks." Steve looked at him with tired eyes. "Then push the shoot. I'll be ready when I'm ready." The studio threatened to sue. Steve didn't care. His lawyer dealt with it. Eventually, they pushed production. Stories like this one deserve to be remembered. The moments when legends proved they were human. The split-second decisions that saved lives. If you want to hear more stories about the people who shaped an era, the moments of courage that no one filmed, and the humanity behind the fame, this channel tells those stories. Because these aren't just tales about famous people. They're lessons about what it means to be brave. Steve's shoulder healed. Took 4 months instead of 3. He did physical therapy. Got back on a motorcycle as soon as the doctor cleared him. Never stopped riding. Never stopped racing. Some people said he was crazy. That he should have learned his lesson. Steve's answer was always the same. I didn't learn to avoid motorcycles. I learned that they're worth the risk. The kid's name was Danny Ramirez. He was 17 years old. That day on Mulholland changed his life. He never rode a motorcycle without proper training again. He took a safety course, got his license the right way, and he never forgot Steve McQueen. Every year on May 23rd, Danny would think about that day, about how close he came to dying, about the movie star who'd broken his own shoulder to save a stranger. In 1980, Steve McQueen died of cancer. He was 50 years old. The whole world mourned. Tributes poured in from Hollywood, from racing communities, from fans around the globe. Danny Ramirez, who was 26 by then and working as a motorcycle mechanic, drove to the funeral. He stood in the back, didn't talk to anyone, just paid his respects. And he thought about the man who taught him what real courage looked like. That's the Steve McQueen story that should be told. Not just the king of cool with the ice blue eyes, not just the action star who did his own stunts, but the man who saw a kid in trouble and turned his bike into a barrier. The man who took a hit that shattered his shoulder because saving a life mattered more than protecting himself. The man who never bragged about it, never sought credit, just did what needed to be done. Steve McQueen lived fast, died young, became a legend. But on May 23, 1971, on a curve on Mulholland Drive, he became something more than a legend. He became a hero, not because of how he looked or what he said, but because when it mattered, when a life was on the line, he didn't think about himself. He thought about a scared kid on a motorcycle who needed help, and he gave it, whatever the cost. That's not acting, that's character, and that's why we remember him.